All right, well, welcome back to Digital Imaging 2 from Digital Imaging 1. This week's assignment, you guys are going to create an inspirational poster. I did air quotes. You can't see them, but trust me, I did them. So what I want you guys to do is you're going to just go around and take abstract photos because you need a background of some sort. If you don't know, we'll obviously cover a little bit what abstract images are, or abstract photography more specifically. There's a nice little article here where it kind of it gives you ideas as well as examples of abstract photography, like things you should focus on, like focus on shape, focus on line, focus on bright colors, nature, texture, things like that, repetition, that sort of stuff. So you can look at that article. It should hopefully maybe give you a good guide. But what we're looking for is more or less a background to put your text on, because this week is it's going to kind of cover two things. One is just thinking generally about the composition as a whole, and not necessarily about that we're trying to focus in on a specific subject matter. Um, you know, a good photographer takes pictures of things. A great photographer takes pictures of compositions. So it's not just about the subject matter that you're photographing. It's about how it looks in the frame. All right. So there's so anyway, you're going to want to basically follow that and take a bunch of abstract photography. So that's kind of the one thing, and the other more, we'll say Photoshop specific, is going to be text. So what I want you to do is to make basically have a background of your abstract photography, enhance it, adjust it, rotate it, do whatever you have to do. The idea here is that you shouldn't, if it's done particularly well, you usually can't tell exactly what the photo is of. And then in the foreground, you're going to write some sort of, inspirational message like hang in there or whatever, and it could be something if you want to do like a quote from a book, or maybe a whole poem or something like that, or a line from a poem, or things like that. But what I want you to do is play around with the text, try different typefaces, try different orientations, using different layer styles and effects and things like that. That's what we're looking for. So I'm going to do one for you here, and then you would just kind of cover or kind of follow a relatively similar pattern, but a process, but maybe do it a little bit differently depending on your own specific ideas. So obviously you'd want the image to make sense with with the message that you're saying, right? So if you're going to do like an Edgar Allan Poe um, uh, quote or something, then you probably want something kind of gothic and dark in the back, right? But if I was going to do something from Willy Wonka, probably like bright colors and shininess and things like that. Okay, so maybe a lot of patterns and stuff. So I took a bunch of abstract photography. These are just the best ones that I took. So you can see they're just basically, I'm just looking for patterns, textures, things like that. Okay. And what you'll notice with mine specifically is that I'm not good at it. So this is one of those things that some students, this is one of those things where you really see who photographers are. They're just really good at taking these kind of photos. And it's not something I'm particularly skilled at, as you can tell. So I tried my best. Don't judge me. Photography is the one thing that I'm really not particularly good at. That's not kind of conceited. It's one of the art stuff. It's one of my least capable skills. Let's say. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we'll just start off with something new. I'm just going to do a new image, and we're going to do our typical 6x9. So let's do this by inches, and I'll do 6x9, and resolution is going to be 300, right? So 300, and I don't know why the color mode is grayscale. We're going to do RGB color. 8-bit's fine. Background, we can do white. I don't really care. The rest of it's fine. Create. Yay. So I don't really like this orientation. I'm going to do it the other way. You can do either way. You can do portrait or landscape. So I'm just going to go to image. We're just going to go to image rotation, and I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise so that it's this direction. I could have also just swapped the numbers, obviously, but this makes it a little bit easier. All right. So I want to bring in my picture for my background. So I'm just going to do File, Place, Embedded. And I'm going to go to my desktop and then here, and I'm going to use this one here. And we're going to wait, because apparently it's okay, it's doing it. Scratches are full. Hang on one second. My memory is low. So if you ever get that message that says scratch disk are full, basically, in order for the program to run, it has to have memory available on your hard drive, and if you don't have that, then says full. These videos that I make are pretty large, so they often have that problem. So I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to rotate. I'm just going to hold shift as I rotate it, so that way it's stays incremental. I'm just going to grab this. Don't hold shift while you do this part. All right, and we're just going to go something like that, and I'll hit enter, and voila. Okay, so got it. Thanks. All right, so this is my background image. So now what I do is just make adjustments and such. Just do your typical adjustments that you would want to try. I could even try some of these ones. If you want to try these new adjustment presets, they're pretty neat looking. I would say generally they work pretty well. Let me see, single adjustments. So what else do we have? So we have portraits, landscapes, so on and so forth. I think I'm going to do, what's creative? Let's look at the creative ones. Color drop. That one's no good to me. We'll do, that one's too much. I'll do dark fade. That looks fine. Okay, so figured just give it a go, right? Why not try? All right. The other thing is too, though, is I feel like this is too bright. Like this can compete with my text. So I'm just gonna try to specifically grab this area and make adjustments and basically remove that. So let's just make sure I have this layer selected. I'm gonna go to my adjustments, and we're gonna go back to view all. I'm gonna collapse the adjustments presets, and let's just use the levels. And what I'm going to do is the whites here, I'm just going to take those. I'm sorry, I'm going to take the blacks here. And we'll take this. Let's see. I don't want that part. Let's see if I take. It's not quite what I was hoping for. Auto. Let's see, on and off. It brightens it up a little bit, but I might have to just specifically target this. I think what I'm going to do actually is trash that one. Just grab it, throw it in the trash. And what I'm going to do instead is select this one, and I'm going to use curves because that'll allow me to grab the hotspots. So with curves selected, see, I can see a little bit more here. I'm going to take the high spot here. I'm going to make it so that it never gets that high. Now you're going to notice it's going to make the whole image darker. But what I'm going to do is go like this. I'm going to click over here, and I'll pull this up. And then I can kind of pull this down a little bit. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it so that the hot spots aren't quite as hot. So it never gets up to that pure white. And in essence, what I'm kind of doing is actually removing contrast because I'm removing the bright spots. So you can see it just brings that down a little. I'm a super big fan of it. Let's try to make this more in level. But should hopefully do something like that. Maybe even put a second one in there just to help it. Because I just want to maybe try and make it not so obvious. The other thing I'm going to do actually I think might be nice is do a vignette. Maybe basically darken the outside edge. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and go to the rectangle tool here. And what we're going to do is, let's see, fixed ratio, fixed size. I was hoping it would give me another option. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and actually put feather on this. So that way it'll be rounded. And we will go ahead and do, let's say, 150 pixels. Okay. And I am going to more or less draw something like that. Okay, so you can see. And then what we're going to do, so I have this selected. I'm going to actually want the opposite. I'm going to do Control-Shift-I. So it makes everything on the outside selected instead. And then what I'm going to do is go up to here, and let's just use exposure for this. So we'll do exposure. And now, if I take the exposure and I go down, you'll see it'll darken the outside edges. Because if you look at that, I basically feathered that. So just to kind of give it a little bit more of a focus on the center. It'll just help kind of draw the person to the center of the stage. Okay. Good. The other thing I'm going to do actually is, I think I'm going to turn this around because I'm going to put the text in what we call optical center. So I'm going to hit Control, we'll hit V for the select tool. I'm going to hit Control T for free transform. I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm just going to rotate this direction instead. And let's move it down a little as well. Okay, like that. The reason being is I want to put the text up here. Optical center, basically, like center's right here. Optical center slightly above. Okay, so I'm going to put my text here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to kind of collapse that. Let's take all of these and put these in a new layer, or in a folder. So I'm gonna click them all, hit the little folder, and I'm gonna rename this, and we'll just call this background. That way it's a little bit easier to differentiate it, and I can see that's back there. And let's go ahead and lock this as well so I don't accidentally mess something up there. Now what I need to do is put in some text. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my text tool, or my horizontal type tool. We're going to go here, and then I choose the color here. So I'm going to do something just basically bright. What I would suggest generally doing is sampling from the image itself. So I'm going to look for a lighter spot on this. So we'll say that, and then I'm just going to push it up a little bit. That way it's in the same hue spectrum as this. And we can always adjust this color afterwards, but we'll start off with this. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, and I got my type tool, and I'm going to make sure this is pretty large. Let's go up to, let's say 150, and we're going to say, oh, that's pretty big. I'm going to type in my word, so obstacle. All right, and I'm just going to move it down here. And then with that selected, I'm going to go over here, and I should be able to, yeah. So you can click on this and then just hit the down arrow, and then you can see different versions of it, okay? Now, if you are struggling to find a font that you already have in here that you like, what you can do is you can find other fonts. So like you might notice that some of mine you don't have. So to do that, if you go online, and if we type in dafont.com, might be defonts, is it? Okay, yeah, it's just the one. So dafont.com. In here, what you can do is you can look up fonts and then use those and apply them. Okay, so in this case, you can see they actually have them organized in different, depending on what you're looking for. Like you can see techno ones, right, and gothic ones, and basic ones, scripts, right. So the ones that are kind of handwritten, dingbats. These are just dumb ones. Holiday ones. So this is particularly useful if you're trying to like make an ad for something, and it's like, oh, this is going to be our winter catalog. You could use this Christmas one, right? Or it's fall time. Use the Halloween one. That will actually help. I think they actually have it by. I think they might have fall and stuff too. Where is that? Maybe not. You can see right here we have sports and stuff as well. But you can see all sorts. There's a horror one, distorted, and when you click on them. So let's just say we do. Let's do eroded, right? So eroded makes sense. And if I look in here, you can see there are 81 pages. And how many are on a page? Quite a few. So what you're going to see is that generally speaking, you can put in here what you want. So I want to write obstacle, okay? And we will submit that. So it should say obstacle. So now they'll all say obstacle. Tells you how many fonts. Now, what's nice with this is it'll filter it by the popularity. Okay. Now, normally you're like, oh, I'm going to be different. Believe it or not, actually, popularity is usually best because that means that it is being used and that it's current. Meaning that, like, if it's the most popular, then obviously it's the one being used the most right now. And a lot of times when you're creating graphic design, you typically want to make sure that your work is current. I did air quotes again, but so that's kind of what we might look for. So I'm going to look at these and be like, oh, which one would be good? And I'll say, I mean, these all look acceptable. So we'll do, because I want to make it easy to see. I kind of like this one, but I'm going to just go with this one. So I'm just going to click on it. I'll download it. It's going to download it. Now, what you also will notice is that they have a README, and the README will explain the license. So this is free to use for personal use only. Some of them are free for commercial use. Some are not. If you want to purchase it, it's right here. So just make sure you read the READMEs. For our intents and purposes, doesn't matter because you're not making this for money. So, but if you were, you should make sure that you pay the person. This has two types, as the open type font and the true type font. Both of them should be valid. So if you're on a Mac, you can actually just double click on this and it will install the font for you, which is pretty sweet. On a PC, we have to do a little bit differently. We have to maybe I can double click. Okay, yeah, you can double click, and then you would just click install, and then it's going to install. On a Mac, it will just automatically install. You won't have to do that. It used to be a lot more difficult. You used to have to copy and paste it into a specific folder. It was really annoying. Okay, so now I have that one. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to use that typeface, right? So what was the name of that one, actually? It was called Russian. Okay. So I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to type in Russian. And there, Russian something distressed. Okay, good. So that looks fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make this a little bit. Oops, I meant to grab the side here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so it's more like what I was thinking. So we'll say obstacle. And I'm going to make it so it's a little bit, we're going to make it right aligned. So we'll do something like that. All right, and I'll just hit enter, and voila. Okay, so obstacle, and then what I'm going to have a second font, and so I'm just going to do this again. We're going to put right here, and I'll make it smaller. Let's do 72 this time, and we're going to write opportunity. Okay, because behind every obstacle is an opportunity. You knew it was coming. Okay, so we'll just scale this out a little bit more. Typically, it's better to give it like actual things there, but in this case, I'm just going to do a little bit less. I'm going to put this in the same spectrum. Let's with this. Oh, let's execute, and then with this selected, I'm just going to click on this, and we'll just see if I can get away with doing black work. I think black will work. We'll do black. All right, and then from here. I can make some other options. Now, I would suggest, playing around and like maybe you want to, come on, maybe you want to like do obstacle and then put opportunity this way, right? Or maybe like overlap the O's, right? So obstacle and then opportunity. I want you to play around with the text, right? Or do opor and then tunity. Or if you have a bunch of words, maybe make like just jam them up into, but in a way that makes sense, okay? In my case, what I'm decided to do, because I'm kind of silly, I'm a silly boy, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to take this and I'm going to make it look more like it's like a shadow of it, because that kind of goes with my theme here. So we're going to go like that, and then we'll go up a little bit, and I'm just going to make sure that this is underneath that one. And then I'm actually going to change the font just because why not? Although it actually probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So we'll do that one's, yeah, this one will work. We'll do this one, download. So what's this one? Ghost Factory. So I'm just going to double click on it, install. It's kind of slow. Give it a second. I think it installed, hopefully. We'll leave that open and hope that it did install. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in Ghost Factory. Beautiful. And I'm not sure what's going on here. Does it not have all the typefaces? All right, let's go back here. That's weird. Let's delete that and let's just start over. And it's so Ghost Factory, it doesn't even work. Let's see. All right, so that one's not going to work. Sometimes the font faces or the typefaces don't work. So let's get rid of that. That one would have been nice. So let's just look for another one. That makes sense. Let's do this one, we'll say. Okay, download. Yay. All right. And then I'll just install this one. Hopefully it installs. I don't know if maybe I tried to open it before the other one came in. What was the name of that one? Terrible memory. Headliner. Okay. So let's undo. So I get my, there we go. And then what I'm going to do is change this to Headliner. And hopefully that works. There we go. Okay. And there we go. Something like that. And then enter, take obstacle and move it this way a little bit. Okay. So now it looks like it's like a shadow coming off of it. Now, what we can do is play around with this a little bit more. So it's kind of a matter of what you want to do. So for one, let's take obstacle. Quite frankly, to be honest, I probably would like this better, but just so you can see some other options, you might want obstacle to have a like a texture or something instead. So I'm going to take this and we're going to do file and I'm going to place embedded again. This time I'm going to choose, we'll do this cracky one. Okay. And I'm just going to rotate it this way and make sure it's big enough. That's good. Let's go like that. Okay. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to take obstacle, I think goes above, and then we right click and you go create clipping mask. Hang on a second. Maybe it's the other way around. I always get this confused. Right click, create clipping mask. There we go. And now what you're going to see is that that texture is shown through the obstacle. Okay. And then from there, I can make other adjustments and such as well. But see, I hope you can tell. Like, so if I take this, watch, if I move this around, do you see the texture underneath? So you can use an image underneath or above as a clipping mask over top of the text, and then that way it'll show through. So you could get some interesting, you can play around with some interesting things there. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is, so the obstacle looks fine, but opportunity is a little bit hard to read. So for that, I'm just going to go ahead and use a layer effect. So I'm going to go to effects, and then let's click on bevel and emboss, for instance. It's going to bring this up. I don't really like bevel and emboss, although it actually looks okay on this one. Basically, what it does is it tries to give it like a 3D effect, and you can see there's different ones here. I'm going to turn that one off. Instead, I like stroke typically. So what that does is it does an outline around it. So oops, turn that one back off and make sure I have this one selected. And then in here, I can choose the size of the stroke. I could choose the color. Again, I would probably choose color that's already in here, something like that. Right, so that would work. Positions on the outside, you can also make it on the inside, but might make it a little bit, oh, it's kind of cooler on the inside. Blend modes, things like that, right? There's other ones here as well, like inner shadow. We could do drop shadow. So let's turn this one off for a second. And if I did drop shadow, but instead used this color, and then let's see. Oh, it's on multiply. So instead of multiply, because I'm trying to lighten it, I'd actually want to do screen. And then this is the angle of the light, so I just need to make sure it's going in that direction. And then what I'm going to do is distance will how far it is. I'm actually going to take that and not do it at all because I'm just trying to make it kind of around it. Spread will how much it's going, and then size is actually kind of more like spread. It fuzzes it a little bit more. So we're just going to go like that, and I'm going to take the opacity down a little bit because I'm just trying to make it a little bit easier to read, but I don't want to really actually see that effect. So you can play around with a bunch of these. So you can see this drop shadow, outer glow, pattern overlay, gradient overlay. We could do gradient overlay, so that's not going to do too much. If I do screen instead, because it would add the light to it, you can see it does that. So basically, it'll just put a gradient over the entirety, whatever that object is. It's not going to be particularly useful for us. Color overlay, that's just literally going to put a color over top of it, whatever color you put here, so that's not super useful. Satin kind of looks like the bevel a little bit. You're not going to be able to see it. Maybe if I do screen instead. You're not really seeing it. But then there's inner glow, inner shadow. Stroke, I find super useful. I use stroke quite a bit. Maybe what I could do is just do a lot weaker version of that just to help really make that pop. This I find really helpful because a lot of times, let's say you have a busy background, you can use that in order to, that's making it pop a little too much. You can use that to kind of help make the text stick out. Okay, so try a bunch of these. These are super useful for that as well. I'm going to do one other thing here too, which is kind of weird. I'm going to go ahead and put a mask on this. And then I'm going to use, just because I want to try and make it look like a shadow. This is just a very specific my thing right now. Let's take the flow way down. And then we'll make this brush a lot bigger. Just using the bracket key to the right of the P key. And I am painting black. So if I go like that, yeah. Oh, you know what the problem is though? Is that the glow is still showing up underneath it. So that actually doesn't work very well. If I took the effect off, then it would. But then it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with not doing that. So it was an idea. I'm actually going to take this and make this multiply as well. And then let's take the opacity down a little bit because it feels a little bit too dark. Actually, I wonder if instead I used fill. No, that's only going to work if I do the one thing. We don't want to do that. Yeah, we'll just use this. Oops. Okay. All right. And you can see a message we can all get behind. Although you can see this is really busy, actually. This is hard to see, so I did a bad job. I wonder if this is, you should never do this. Control T. I'm just going to hold Shift to make it not proportionate. And then we'll go like this and do a little bit less of a shadow. And then we'll just make that using my arrow keys to get a little bit closer. And then we'll just hold Shift and pull it this way a little bit more. You want to try and line it up. We'll do something like that. You get the idea. All right. And voila, I've now made a poster that we can all get behind, right? Because behind every obstacle is an opportunity. That's kind of the mantra of my life, to be honest. So, anyway, hopefully that makes sense. Play around with the text. Try using the effects. I want to see you use layer effects. I want to see you use, obviously, make adjustments and stuff to your backgrounds to make sure that those look better. I want to see laser effects, layer effects. Use the clipping mask if it makes sense. Definitely look up typefaces, apply different typefaces. I really want to see you play around with the typeface. This is one of those things where graphic designer people in general are very good at utilizing type and implementing it in new and interesting ways. It's like they're always reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. It's one of the things that kind of fascinates me about graphic design. It's not something I'm particularly skilled at, more so than probably photography, as you can tell, but still not very good. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense, and good luck.